Let's brighten up a dull winter day with some easy-to-do projects. It's all coming up after this. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Who says the winter has to be void of color? There are lots of ways to liven up your surroundings. If you're longing for the green grass of spring, then you'll want to stick around for planting an indoor lawn. This project is perfect for those who like simplicity in their decorating, and the chartreuse color looks fantastic with modern decor. I'll also show you how to pot up Paperwhites for winter bloom, and then give you some creative ways to bring their sweet-smelling fragrance into your home. And if winter color is what your home needs, I'll share with you some winter blooming houseplants. We'll wrap the show up by whipping up a batch of rosemary cookies. They're so delicious and perfect for giving friends and family on a cold winter's day. And we'll also make some rosemary butter. It's easy to make and you'll love the flavor. You see, this show is about simple and easy ideas that will brighten your winter. So let's get started with the always simple to grow Amaryllis bulb right after the break.
This Garden Destination segment is brought to you by Garden Safe, makers of garden care products that deliver beautiful results. Garden Safe, it's the right thing to do.
Dutch bulb importers like the John Sheepers Company here in New England are very busy this time of year, distributing flower bulbs for our gardens and for forcing indoors. Probably one of the most popular is the Amaryllis, but there are some important things to know when selecting these. So I asked Jan Ooms, the president of the company and a direct Dutch descendant of the founder, what he looks for when selecting flower bulbs.
Well, first of all, I look at the size and the strain. There's several strains available from Holland, but size is a big thing. And this is a top-size bulb, 34 centimeters circumference. It'll give you 2 stems and sometimes 3 stems.
Really?
And sometimes as many as 6 flowers per stem. So it makes quite a show all by itself. Right, we now have 2 types of Amaryllis. This one comes out of the Dutch greenhouses, and then we have African Amaryllis. As you know, in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are just the opposite from ours. So for early flower and dependable early flower, the Africans are the thing to have. And for later flower, into January, February, the Dutch are the thing.
Amaryllis produce some of the largest flowers that you can grow indoors. And that's not surprising when you consider the size of these bulbs. To plant them, simply fill in around the bulb with soil in a clay pot, leaving approximately 1/4 of the top of the bulb exposed. You see, it only takes a few weeks, plenty of light and consistent moisture for the bulb to produce a gorgeous flower like this. Oh, and because these blooms are so robust, it's important to have plenty of stakes on hand to give them a little support. You see, the blooms are so large and top-heavy, they can topple and break. One of the most enjoyable things for me about winter is forcing bulbs to bloom indoors. But I'm often asked, what do you do with the plant after the flowers fade? Well, if you live in a mild part of the country, you can plant things like Amaryllis and Paperwhites directly in the garden, and they'll bloom again next year. These bulbs can't take freezing temperatures, but there is a way to get them to rebloom indoors. It's difficult to do with Paperwhites, so what I do is just grow them off, and once the flowers begin to fade, and as you can see, these are on their way out, I just enjoy the foliage for a while, and then I discard them. But it's a different story with these Amaryllis. If you've priced Amaryllis bulbs, you know they don't just give them away. The larger the bloom, generally the more expensive. And these premium bulbs will usually put out 2 or 3 flower stalks and lots of blossoms. But it's always my goal to try to get this flower to come back next year. And it's all about reinvigorating the flower bulb. You see, for a plant to produce this many blooms, it takes all of the energy out of the bulb. So what I'm going to try to do is help it recharge itself. Once the beauty is gone from the flower, I cut the stalk just above the bulb and encourage the foliage to continue to grow. From here on out, it's all a matter of treating it like a houseplant. Keeping the foliage healthy is critical because this is what feeds the bulb, and if it begins to flop, you may need to stake and tie it. Now feed it a couple of times a month until late fall. Then back off of the water and the food. Keep it in a place that's about 48 degrees for 8 to 10 weeks. Then bring it back into the warmth of your home, and in no time it'll bloom again. Another fantastic winter bloom is the Paperwhite. I'll show you how I like to use these during the coldest part of the season. Plus we'll grow an indoor lawn right after this. Earlier we saw how to use those dramatic Amaryllis bulbs indoors to bring color and beauty into our homes during the winter. Now let me show you another winter bulb, Paperwhites. As you can see, these are a little more petite than the Amaryllis bulb. But let me tell you, when they're in bloom, they pack a potent punch when it comes to fragrance. Now potting them up is simple. Paperwhites are part of the Narcissus family, which immediately makes you think of these beautiful daffodils, right? So many people wonder about chilling daffodil bulbs before planting. Well, don't worry, these Paperwhites don't require chilling. But for those questions about daffodils, I've got some tips on that at pallensmith.com. Paperwhites can begin flowering within 5 to 6 weeks after planting. So if you're into immediate gratification, there's no waiting until spring. I planted these bulbs just 10 days ago, and you can see how they've already started to sprout. And look at all of these vigorous white roots. I like to plant a few bulbs each week, from just before Thanksgiving until Christmas. This will give me plenty of blooms through the holidays and through the month of January. I always purchase plenty of extra bulbs and keep them stored in my refrigerator in a paper bag until I'm ready to plant them. About the only problem with this plant is that they can grow tall and spindly and have a tendency to flop over. However, this can be easily avoided by not allowing them to grow too fast. Giving the bulbs plenty of light and keeping them in cool temperatures will make the plant sturdy and last longer. If they do begin to flop, you may just have to stake and tie them. Now, one last tip. It's critical you give them plenty of water. You cannot overwater Paperwhites, so don't worry. This is a case where more is better. If you try these, you'll find that growing a spring bouquet of fragrant flowers was never so easy or so much fun. Now, if Paperwhites aren't your thing, how about considering the simple rye-grass project? You see, it's a great way to bring a touch of spring freshness into the winter home. Now, you'll want to start with a simple container. I'm using this one that's in the shape of a long rectangle. But you see, any shape or form will do. Now all you need is just some gravel. I'm using some pea gravel here that I'm just going to pour in the bottom of the container for drainage. Now what I've done is I've filled this to about, 2 inches from the bottom with gravel. Now the next step is just simply add some potting soil. So I'm just going to fill the container with potting soil. I'm just using a blend that's specifically created for container gardening. And what I'm going to do is bring it up to about 3/4 of an inch from the top. Just pack it in occasionally. I'm going to add a little more here. It always takes more than you think. Just keep filling it in. And one more handful will do the trick. Okay. Here we go. Now, the finishing touch is just the seed itself. Now, I'm using rye-grass seed, which you can pick up at a local nursery, home improvement store, or hardware store. If you can't find it, you can also use wheat seed, which can be bought at a health food store. Now, I'm just going to cover this with a thin layer of soil, about 1/4 of an inch is all, and gently spread it across. Now, I'll move this to a sunny location, water it in 7 to 12 days, all the seed will germinate and I'll have a little lawn that'll bring bright bursts of green that reminds us that spring is just around the corner. Now, if you're looking for refreshing indoor color, then hang on. After this break, I'll share with you more great houseplants with winter blooms. With the holidays now behind us and all of those cheerful seasonal decorations packed away, you may want to add a little life to your home with a few houseplants. Now, to me, the only thing better than a houseplant is one that's easy to care for, and it's always nice if it blooms, like these kalanchoes, or a spathiphyllum, or bromeliads, or even a cyclamen. I like to use cyclamen during the holidays because their blooms last well into the new year. This versatile little plant comes in a wide range of colors, from white to various shades of pink into deep maroon. And if that's not enough, the foliage looks like a hand-painted masterpiece. Now here's an interesting bloom. I'm partial to bromeliads because of their tough nature and longevity. These plants are equally suited for a modern or classically designed interior. Like the old reliable mother-in-law's tongue, I think they're best displayed in a simple container that showcases and sets off the funky and fun form of the plant. You see, low light, low humidity, and dry air make it unbearable for many plants, but not bromeliads. In their native habitat, they grow with very little root system on tree branches, trunks, and even on rocks. With so few roots, you might guess it wouldn't require much water. Well, you're right. In fact, overwatering is the #1 cause of death with bromeliads in our homes. Too much moisture around the roots will cause them to rot. This plant has other ways of storing moisture. Its leaves overlap to create cups, which actually hold water. Now, when it comes to duration of bloom, I have to say the orchid always seems to come in first place. The arcing stems adorned with delicate butterfly-shaped blooms add elegance to even the drabbest room. I like to create winter gardens using orchids with other houseplants such as cyclamen, variegated English ivy, and ferns. These long-blooming arrangements carry me through the coldest days of winter. Now, one of the easiest orchids to grow is the Phalaenopsis. It'll take low light conditions. And as far as the ideal temperature goes, if you're comfortable, it is too. When it comes to soil, you'll find most orchids really don't like it. You see, they prefer something much looser, like the bark of fir trees. Some growers like to create their own mix, which is an equally porous blend of 50-50 fir bark and lava rock. Orchids are light feeders. You only need to fertilize them with about 25% of the recommended amount on a liquid fertilizer label, and they should be fed about every other week. Now, something to watch out for is salt buildup from fertilizer on the containers. Orchids hate this, so it's important to flush the salts out whenever you water. Now, after the blooms fade, cut the stalk back to the 2nd or 3rd node and reduce the fertilizing to once a month. Now, here are some general rules of thumb to keep in mind when it comes to houseplants. First, you want to avoid extremes. You see, a little restraint will go a long way, particularly when it comes to water. Let me give you an example. Take a look at this Spathiphyllum that's been overwatered compared to one that has had adequate water. And they're both the same age. You see, overwatering kills more plants than underwatering. Just keep the soil moist, but not wet. And when it comes to light, a sunny window is a welcome sight for many houseplants, but again, do not be extreme. You see, indirect light is much better for them than putting them directly in the windowsill, where they can be damaged by the intense rays of the sun. Temperature is also important, but as you might guess, extreme highs and lows are hard on houseplants. So keep them away from areas of abruptly changing temperatures. By following a few of these basic tips, you can enjoy beautiful houseplants like these all winter long.
This Allen's Mailbox segment is brought to you by Marvin Windows and Doors, where our premier made-to-order windows and doors help open your home to the garden. Learn more at marvin.com.
All right, now it's time to answer viewer mail. We have a letter from Marilyn in Georgia, and she writes, "Help! There are little bugs all over my houseplants. Is there a safe remedy for this?" Well, Marilyn, you've come to the right place. In fact, the solution may be as close as your kitchen sink. For example, it was discovered, probably quite by accident, that by throwing dirty dishwater out the back door onto plants, it could get rid of certain insects. And over time, this practice of using soapy water in this way became fairly common. I've had reasonable success going up against certain plant-loving insects, both in my garden and in my house, by mixing a couple of teaspoons of dishwashing liquid to a quart of water and spraying them. Now, what this solution does is break down the outer covering or the cuticle of an insect, making it more susceptible to disease, dehydration, and other insects. Now, if you do this, you need to be careful because the same sort of outer covering or waxy coating is also on plants. And this can damage young tender plants if they get too much on them. So I recommend spraying a few plants first, wait 24 hours, and then if there's no problem, then go for the pests. A simple solution of 1 part rubbing alcohol to 3 parts water can have a similar effect on these little devils, particularly mealybugs. Now, another tip to keep in mind is if you have infested houseplants, remove them. Keep them isolated from your healthy plants. You don't want the disease or the problem to spread. All right, now houseplants are certainly a feast for our eyes, but what about something for our taste buds? Up next, 2 ideas that make good use of rosemary during the winter months. Stay with us. During the winter months, we enjoy the fragrance of evergreens indoors in the form of fresh-cut greenery and holiday decorations. We also get to experience the incredible aroma and flavor of a popular evergreen herb, rosemary. Now, one way to add a touch of rosemary to your dinner table is to make rosemary butter. It's so simple. Just take 4 sticks of softened butter, 2/3 cup of light cooking oil, 2/3 cup of buttermilk, and 1 to 3 tablespoons of fresh minced or 1 to 3 teaspoons of dried crushed rosemary. Then stir all of the ingredients together and place them on a cookie sheet lined with wax paper. The mixture should be about 1/2 inch thick. Refrigerate the butter until hardened and then use decorative cookie cutters to punch out the shapes. Now here's another winter treat that makes the most of rosemary. I really don't do much baking, but there are certain recipes that have become favorites of mine over the years, and they can always lure me back into the kitchen. One of these is for a simple cookie, and it includes one of my favorite herbs, rosemary. This is regarded as the herb of remembrance and friendship, so it's certainly appropriate to use it around the beginning of the new year when so many friends and family get together. It all begins with a basic sugar or butter cookie recipe of your choice. I just blend together 1/2 cup of butter with 1/2 cup of shortening, 1.5 cups of sugar, and 2 eggs. Now that this is nice and creamy, I'm ready to stir in the dry ingredients, which include 2 3/4 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar, 1 teaspoon of soda, and about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, all blended together. Be sure to sift your flour before you add it. Now I'm ready for the most important ingredient, at least when it comes to flavor. I'm using 2 scant teaspoons of fresh chopped rosemary. Now I'm forming the dough into small balls and placing them on an ungreased baking sheet. I like to press them with the bottom of a drinking glass that I've dipped in sugar. This gives them a nice crunchy glaze. Now I'm ready to slide them into a preheated 400-degree oven for only about 8 minutes. It's a good idea to loosen the cookies as soon as you take them from the oven. This is a great way to enjoy both the flavor and aroma of rosemary.
If you want beautiful trees, shrubs, and flowers, but your last water bill gave you sticker shock, don't punish your plants. Grow with Nutrimoist crystals, a biodegradable crystal that helps to hold moisture and nutrients closer to your plant's roots. Mix these granules into potting soil or flower beds. Add water, and the granules enlarge, locking moisture into the plant's root zone, which ultimately means less watering for you and more time and money on your hands. Want a more beautiful garden with less work? Learn more about Nutrimoist crystals at Nutrimoist.com.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. We've certainly tasted some delicious recipes and seen some gorgeous flowers like these beautiful bromeliads. Now, if you missed something on the show, you can always pick it up on my website. It's pallensmith.com. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.